Well, hello there and welcome you guys back with another video of Drawing to Learn Anatomy with Khoa. Today we will go to part 2 of our two-part video about the circle of Willis. And in this video we will draw out the terminal branches of the circle of Willis. So if you would like to draw out these arterial branches that makes up the circle of Willis, like in this drawing, then please stick around to the end of this video. Well, hello everybody and welcome back to Drawing to Learn Anatomy with Khoa. My name is Khoa, lecturer of anatomy, physiology, and medical terminology in Vietnam. And today what we're going to do is that we are going to draw out part 2 of the circle of Willis. This is the part 2 of a series of 2 videos about the circle of Willis, which is a very important circle of arterial, which is a very important circle of arteries at the base of the brain that provides blood to the parenchyma, the brain, as well as other intracranial structures. So now, in part 1, we have already determined the origins of the vessels that are going to make up the circle of Willis. And we said that these vessels belong to 2 different systems. The anterior systems, also called the internal carotid system, will consist of 2 internal carotid arteries. And then the posterior system is going to compose of the vertebrobasilar system. Basically, the 2 vertebral arteries going into the foramen magnum and join together to become the basilar artery. So now, before we begin drawing out all the terminal branches of these arteries and the circle of Willis itself, let's just take a little bit of time to go through our 3 disclaimers. We are going to have 3 disclaimers just like every time we have done this before. Number 1, you will need 1 pen only for this drawing exercise, and that is the red pen. This red pen is going to be for arterial branches. So basically, these are 4 arterial branches of the parts of the circle of Willis. Now, next up, for me, I'm going to have a blue pen. And this blue pen is going to strictly for labeling. Okay, so you don't have to have that blue pen. Okay, you don't have to label it any different than you do the arterial branches. You can use a red pen to label. But for me, simply because of the fact that I want to make this as clear as possible for you guys, I'm going to label by using a blue pen instead of a red pen like before. Okay, so now the next disclaimer is, even though I try to maintain an adequate or slow drawing pace so that everybody will be able to follow me through this exercise, sometimes I do admit that I tend to go a little bit too fast on my drawing. And if that is the case, then you can hit pause on YouTube, catch up with me, and then we can continue going together. Finally, as the last disclaimer, anatomical variations is very much a thing. In this video, you will see that there are going to be the 2 branches of the internal carotid arteries called the posterior communicating artery. And those arteries are going to be different in people. So in some people, these arteries on one side is going to be so small that it's almost non-existent on one side, either the left side or the right side. On some other person, the artery, the posterior communicating artery on one side may be duplicated. There will be 2 posterior arteries on that one side. And the same goes for anterior communicating artery. Sometimes you don't see it. And sometimes there will be some weird stuff going on with all of those communicating arteries. So the shape of the circle of Willis is by no means fixed between people, and it is something that we do need to live with. All right, so now with all of that out of the way, let's use the red pen and we will draw out the terminal branches of the internal carotid arteries and the vertebrobasilar system that eventually makes up the circle of Willis. Okay, so let's start by drawing out these 2 arteries here. And those 2 arteries, one here and one here, okay, they are indeed the internal carotid arteries. So I'm just going to label them here very quickly. They are the internal carotid arteries, or ICAs. Okay, and the ICAs are going to run first off in the neck, the cervical part, then go inside of the skull via the carotid canals, run through the petrous part of the temporal bone, then run inside of the cavernous sinus and eventually becoming the intracranial part. this intracranial part will then go to on either side of the sella turcica, and then they will divide into their terminal branches. So now, let us draw out the first two terminal branches from these two ICAs. So that's going to be the first one. And it's going to continue to go forward like this, anteriorly, like that. Yes, there we go. And those are going to be the anterior cerebral arteries, or also called the ACAs. And now, as you can see, at this point right here, when the ACAs are parallel to each other, they are going to usually give out an artery that connects the two ACAs. That artery right there in the middle is called the Anterior Communicating artery, or ACOM for short. So now, let us label those. That one is left anterior cerebral artery, or ACA. And that one right there in between the two ACAs is going to be anterior communicating artery, or ACOM for short. Okay, so now the next branches out from the ICAs are going to be very big branches that go off to the lateral sides. We're not going to be able to draw all of them out in their entirety, but from here they look like that. Okay, and those guys are going to be the middle cerebral arteries, or MCAs. Okay, like for example, for this one, this is going to be the left middle cerebral artery, or MCA. Okay, all right. So now, next stop, the ICA are going to give off these two branches there, okay, going posteriorly. These branches have usually quite tiny caliber, and they are going to be called the posterior communicating arteries. Okay, like for example, right here, you will have the left posterior communicating artery, or PCOM for short. And the shapes and the sizes of these PCOMs vary wildly between people. Some people will have duplicated PCOMs on one or both sides. Some people, these PCOMs are going to be so small that they are barely connecting the ICAs with the vertebrobasilar system at all. But those are the terminal branches of the ICA as it approaches the sella turcica. So now, how about the vertebrobasilar system? Let us draw out the structures of the vertebrobasilar system then. Let's start first with these two arteries down here. Okay. And those two arteries, just like you guys have already known, those guys are going to be vertebral arteries. This one is left vertebral artery. Vertebral arteries are going to go inside of the skull via the foramen magnum, but before they do that, they will give out these two branches here, one from each vertebral artery, and these two will connect with each other and run anterior to the spinal cord. And you will call that the anterior spinal artery. All right, and then the vertebral arteries are going to go inside of the foramen magnum, and then they will immediately join up to form an artery. This artery, just like we have seen before, is called the basilar artery, or the basilar artery. Okay, the basilar artery. Now, the left and the right vertebral arteries will also give out some other branches. Like for example, they are going to give out these two branches, one on either side, here and there, to supply the underside and the posterior surface of the underside of the cerebellum. So you will call these arteries the posterior inferior cerebellar arteries, also called pica for short. So that's the left pica, and then you also have the right pica. Okay, so now, when it first becomes the basilar artery is going to give out two branches. Okay, and these two branches are going to go to the posterior surface of the cerebellum as well, but now more on the anterior side. So you call that naturally the anterior inferior cerebellar artery, or ICA. So you have two ICAs, one on the left and one on the right. Okay, then the basilar arteries will continue to go superiorly like this, and on the way they will give out some branches that are going to go to the pons and supply the pons with blood. And these branches are collectively going to be known as the pontine arteries. And then the basilar artery is going to give out these two other branches like that, going to the side, and supply the superior part of the cerebellum. And those two branches are going to be called the superior cerebellar artery. Okay, so you have a left superior cerebellar artery and the right superior cerebellar artery. After the superior cerebellar artery has already been given off from the basilar artery, the basilar artery will then give out its two terminal branches, and they will go on either side right there to the posterior part of the cerebrum, aka the occipital lobe. And so they are going to be the ones that will also anastomose with the PCOMs on either side like this. And you will call those arteries, let me just go ahead and do that there, very good. We will call those arteries the posterior cerebral artery, PCA. So the PCAs on either side, the left PCA is going to anastomose with the left PCOM, and the right PCA is going to anastomose with the right PCOM. And that will complete our arterial circle. Okay, so now let us see what is defined as the branches that makes up the circle Willis. So the circle Willis is going to be making up of the ACAs, anterior cerebral arteries, on either side like this. Then the ACOM, which is basically the anterior communicating artery in the middle. Then is going to go down like that to the posterior communicating arteries on either side. And then finally, this part right there of the PCAs on either side. And so I'm just going to label it right here. That right there, the shaded portion, that is going to be your circle of Willis. Exclamation marks. Circle Willis. And that's what it is. So note one thing that is very, very important. The MCA, the middle cerebral arteries, are usually not included as a part of the circle Willis. The circle Willis only includes the anterior cerebral arteries on either side, the anterior communicating, the posterior communicatings on either side, as well as the two very small segments called P1 of the posterior cerebral arteries. Okay, so as you can see, the two systems, the internal carotid system and the vertebrobasilar system, is going to join together and anastomose in order to make the circle of Willis. And those are going to be the branches that eventually is going to supply the brain as well as other intracranial structures. All right, and that is also the end of our video today. Thank you very, very much for watching with me to the end and drawing out these structures with me. If you have any questions, please ask it under the comments so that I may be able to address them as soon as possible. If you like this video, please click the like button so that I'm recognized by the YouTube algorithm. If you like this video and want to keep up with more in the future, please click the subscribe button. My name is Khoa. Thank you guys once again, and I will see you in the next couple installments of Drawing to Learn Anatomy with Khoa. Bye-bye.